Hi, I'm Elowen. Last fall, at a dinner table covered in gold and glass, my husband's family laughed about me, right in front of him. His mother called our marriage an experiment. His sister said I was charity. And my husband? He just raised his glass. That was the night I smiled, took off my ring, and ended it. But I didn't know then. Walking out wasn't freedom. It was the first move in a game I never agreed to play. And the next message I got would burn everything I thought was safe. Before we dive in, what time are you listening and where from? Because what happened next could happen to anyone who ever trusted the wrong person. The first thing I noticed wasn't the laughter, it was my name, printed in gold on a folded card beside the fine china, E. Vale. Not veil, veil. One missing letter, one quiet erasure. It sat there, small and deliberate, like a joke no one needed to say out loud. The dining room was a mirror of everything the Ashfords stood for: polished, heavy, expensive. Chandeliers the size of small planets, velvet chairs, waiters gliding in silence. Every detail screamed money, but not warmth, not welcome. I adjusted the napkin on my lap, pretending not to notice the mistake, pretending not to hear Marlowe, my mother-in-law, already holding court at the head of the table. "I told Cassian," she said, her voice carrying easily over the clink of silverware. "This marriage would be an experiment, a year-long one at best." The table chuckled. Cassian didn't. He just lifted his glass, a faint smile, no words, no defense. His silence felt heavier than her insult. Someone across from me whispered, "Poor thing, she's blushing." I wasn't. I'd learned a long time ago that shame doesn't rise to your face. It sinks, deep into your chest, where no one can see it. The waiter poured more wine. I didn't drink. The golden liquid caught the chandelier light, splitting into reflections, tiny cages of light across the tablecloth. Cassian always had a generous heart, Verity, his sister, said sweetly. Not everyone would have taken such a chance. The laughter grew louder this time. I looked down at my plate, a work of art I couldn't touch. My knife was perfectly aligned, my fork gleaming under the soft amber light. Everything so precise, so staged, except me. I glanced at Cassian again. His smile was still there, faint but fixed, like a mask he'd worn too long. I'd seen that look before, at charity galas, at board meetings, whenever someone said something cruel disguised as humor. He'd always told me, "Don't make it awkward, Elowen. It's not worth it." But this time, something inside me cracked. Quietly, cleanly. The sound of laughter faded. I heard my own heartbeat instead, steady and distant. It felt like being underwater, muted, slow, detached. I stared at my reflection in the wineglass. My face looked calm, even, beautiful under the dim light. A woman disappearing in style. Verity leaned closer, her perfume thick and sugary. "You should be grateful, Elowen," she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Some of us marry up. Some of us are charity." The table erupted again. Even Marlowe smiled approvingly. Cassian didn't flinch, didn't look at me, didn't stop it. In that moment, the truth crystallized. Simple and sharp. They didn't hate me because I wasn't one of them. They hated that Cassian had once chosen me. And he hated that he had to keep pretending he still did. They wanted me small, polite, silent. They wanted me to smile while they erased me. So I did the one thing none of them expected. I smiled. I placed my napkin neatly on the table. Then, slow and deliberate, I slipped the wedding ring off my finger. The gold band was warm. I could feel the faint imprint it had left on my skin, like a memory I didn't ask for. I set it beside my half-full glass, its diamond catching the same chandelier light that had trapped me all night. "Then let's end it tonight," I said softly. For the first time, the room went completely still. The laughter died. The forks froze midair. Cassian finally looked up, confusion flickering across his face. "Allowin'!" But I was already standing. My chair scraped against the marble floor, a sound too honest for this polished room. "I think you've all had enough entertainment for one evening," I said. My voice was steady, calm, deadly polite. "Enjoy the experiment." No one followed me as I walked out. No one called my name. The only sound behind me was the faint tinkling of a glass being set down. Cassian's, maybe, too late to mean anything. Outside, the November air bit through my dress. The valet hurried forward, eyes wide, but I waved him off. I wanted to walk. The night was sharp and cold and real. More real than anything inside that gilded room. By the time I reached my apartment, my heels ached, my hands were numb, but my mind was clearer than it had been in months. I kicked off my shoes, hung my coat, and sank onto the couch without turning on the lights. The city hummed outside my window, sirens in the distance, laughter from a nearby rooftop. Ordinary sounds, alive sounds. Then my phone buzzed on the coffee table, once, then again. I hesitated before picking it up. The screen glowed in the dark. Unknown number. "We need to talk." "Cassian isn't who you think he is." My pulse stumbled. The message blinked again, steady, waiting. I didn't know it yet, but that text would rewrite everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I stared at the screen for a long time before opening the message. My thumb hovered above it, suspended in hesitation. Something in me already knew that whatever I was about to see, I wouldn't be able to unsee. When I tapped it open, the message was short, cold. "He moved all your holdings to the Ashford Trust 2 weeks ago. Your name's gone." Attached was a PDF, no explanation, no softening blow. Just that, and the proof. I didn't blink. My eyes burned, but not from tears. I was too still for crying. Too still for anything except that quiet, creeping sense of betrayal that settles in slow, like smoke under a door. I downloaded the document. My breath caught as I scanned it. My name, which had once been printed beside every investment account, every joint venture under Ashford Vale Advisors, had been replaced by a single entity, the Ashford Family Trust. I reached for my laptop, fingers trembling slightly. The wineglass from earlier still sat untouched beside me, casting a warped crescent on the table from the glow of the screen. I typed in the login to our joint account. Denied. I tried my own, the private investment portfolio I'd built before Cassian. Flagged, transferred. Page after page, account after account. All of it stripped clean. A sharp chill swept over me, though the apartment was warm. I wasn't just erased from the dinner table, I was being erased from my own life. And then, like a bitter echo, a memory surfaced. 3 weeks ago, Cassian had poured us both coffee one morning. He was wearing that gray sweater I used to love, the one with the small hole in the sleeve he never noticed. He placed a stack of papers beside my plate, kissed the top of my head. "It's just routine stuff," he'd said lightly. "Tax season's around the corner. You know how the lawyers get." I didn't read them. I signed. Because I trusted him. Because you don't expect the man who once kissed you under string lights in the rain to be the one who'd pull the rug out from under you. I whispered to the empty room. "You didn't just erase my name. You erased my life's work." It didn't feel real yet. It felt like a bad television plotline, too neat, too cruel. I sat in the dark, lit only by the laptop screen, legs curled under me like a girl trying to make herself smaller. The city outside kept moving, sirens humming far off, someone laughing 2 floors up. And then my phone rang. I hesitated, then answered. Merritt's voice came through, low and careful. "Allowin'." I hadn't heard my name spoken gently in weeks. It almost disarmed me. I figured you'd see the file, he said. I swallowed hard. Why are you helping me? I'm not. I'm trying to survive, he replied. Cassian's under quiet investigation, insider trading, and... He paused. And, I asked, bracing. Your name is on half the documents. He used your access codes. Your digital signature is all over. This, Elowen. If this goes public, you'll take the fall first. He made sure of that. The words landed like glass breaking inside my chest. It wasn't just money. It was prison, ruin, headlines. I could have screamed. I could have sobbed. But instead, I sat still. And when I spoke, my voice came out sharper than I'd heard it in years. Then I won't wait for it to go public. Merritt didn't respond right away. When he did, it was only this. He thinks you'll keep quiet. He doesn't think you have it in you. I hung up, and for the first time that night, I didn't feel powerless. I turned back to the screen. I opened our old emails, the first months of Ashford Vale, back when Cassian had let me believe we were partners, not pawns. Buried deep in a thread titled Original Contract Draft A, I found it, the original version. My name still intact, my ownership share still listed, not filed, not finalized, but real. I downloaded it, backed it up twice. Once to a hard drive I hadn't touched since grad school, once to the cloud under a false folder name. My hands moved quickly now, methodical. If there was one thing the Ashfords had taught me tonight, it was that silence leaves a paper trail. And I was done being silent. By sunrise, I had copies of everything. By noon, I'd booked a meeting with the one person Cassian feared most, his own father. The email confirmation blinked on my screen. My meeting with Alaric Ashford was scheduled for 1:15 p.m. No assistant, no staff, just him. That alone told me everything. He wasn't surprised I was coming. I spent the morning pacing. I wasn't trying to rehearse what to say. I knew that wouldn't work with someone like Alaric. I was just trying to get the adrenaline out of my system. My body felt wired, like it knew something was about to shift, even if I didn't know how. At 12:30, I left the apartment. Midtown buzzed beneath a low gray sky. I wore navy, tailored but unassuming. No jewelry, no makeup beyond a little concealer. It was the first time I dressed without thinking about what Cassian might think of it. Ashford Capital occupied the top 10 floors of a steel and glass tower that looked like it had been lifted straight from a movie. The elevator ride was silent, except for the hum of air conditioning and my own heartbeat. Alaric's office was at the end of a long, carpeted corridor. When the assistant opened the door, I stepped into a room that felt more like a museum than a workspace. Mahogany panels, floor-to-ceiling windows, a grandfather clock that ticked like it was measuring the weight of every second. Oil portraits of men with stern eyes and heavy brows lined the walls, gazing down like judges. Alaric didn't rise when I entered. He sat behind a desk that looked carved from the bones of something extinct, hands folded neatly. He gestured toward the chair across from him. "You've made quite a spectacle, walking out on dinner like that." His voice was calm, clipped. The kind that didn't raise, because it didn't need to. "I brought documentation," I said, placing a file on the desk between us. Bank transfers, signatures, my name disappearing from every holding Cassian and I built together. He didn't even reach for the folder. "I assumed you'd come. You were always the type to mistake inclusion for control." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He leaned back. "Cassian did what was necessary, for the family." The family! The way he said it, like a brand, a company, a kingdom, not a home. I sat up straighter. "He forged my signature." Alaric finally looked at the folder. Not at the documents, just the folder. Then his eyes met mine. "Do you know what Ashford means in this city? What it's built to withstand?" "I thought it was built on partnerships," I said. Trust, legacy. He smirked. You were never chosen for love, Elowen. You were chosen for optics, for what you cleaned up, for what your presence said about us. The words landed hard, not like a slap, more like a slow freeze creeping across my skin. And just like that, I saw it. The moment years ago at Cassian's proposal dinner. Alaric had raised his glass and said, "She'll do." I'd taken it as approval. Now I understood it was confirmation of a transaction. You set him up to use me. He raised a brow. We ensured the Ashford name stayed untainted. That's all. You played your part. Well, even. The room tilted slightly, but I kept my tone even. He committed fraud. Alaric's smile didn't reach his eyes. Walk away quietly. We'll compensate you generously. Consider it an exit bonus. I didn't flinch. Your family's reputation isn't worth more than my name. Don't be emotional. I'm not, I said softly. I'm done pretending this is personal. It's not. It's systemic. There was a beat of silence, so thick I could hear the click of the clock across the room. Alaric's gaze narrowed, but I could see it, the faintest twitch in his jaw. A man used to compliance, not confrontation. Especially not from the women his son was supposed to control. I stood. You think silence protects you, but I've learned it only protects the wrong people. He didn't respond. I turned to leave, my heels muffled by the thick carpet. But something made me stop at the far end of the room. A painting, larger than the rest, displayed prominently above a side table. The founding contract, the brass plaque read. The original Ashford document, framed in gold, a flourish of signatures at the bottom, one in particular catching my eye. Cassian's handwriting was a mimicry of this one, a match in style, curve, even pressure. My pulse quickened. I pulled out my phone and discreetly snapped a photo. Sometimes the past leaves clues in plain sight. I left the office without looking back. The elevator doors closed with a gentle hiss. And for the first time, I understood. Cassian wasn't my mistake. He was their heirloom. By the time I stepped out of the Ashford Capitol Tower, the city looked different. Not visually, same traffic, same honking horns, same rush of suits and tourists. But internally, I had shifted. I wasn't walking away from Cassian anymore. I was walking towards something far more dangerous, the truth he had no idea I was unraveling. For the next few days, I kept quiet. I didn't respond to the occasional checking in, text from old friends, or the one voicemail from Cassian's cousin asking if I was over the whole dinner thing yet. Instead, I focused. I gathered everything: screenshots, statements, scanned documents, the photo I took of the original Ashford contract. My world had been reduced to tabs, timestamps, and truths I'd missed while playing the good wife. Then, a week later, just when the silence started to settle into something that almost felt like peace, my phone buzzed. It was from him. Cassian. We should talk. Let's not make this uglier than it already is. I stared at the message for longer than I should have. Part of me wanted to delete it without a second thought, but a smaller, sharper part, the one that now saw everything in layers, told me to meet him. Not for closure, not even for answers. I needed to hear how far he'd go to keep the lie alive. We met at the same cafe where he once told me he felt most like himself. I remember back then thinking that was sweet, that the concrete and chaos made him feel grounded. Now I realized it was the anonymity he liked. This was where he could lie without being watched. He was already at the table when I walked in, sipping espresso like he hadn't gutted my name from every account we shared. The arrogance wasn't new, but it was more polished now, as if he'd practiced it in the mirror. Elowen, he nodded, smiling faintly. You look determined. I didn't sit right away. Let's not waste time. He gestured to the chair across from him. I wanted to explain, Dad, he was protecting us. You don't understand how our business works. I slid a folder across the table. Inside, copies of the transfers, signed agreements with my name erased, one by one. I understand theft perfectly well. He didn't even flinch, just leaned back, glanced at the folder like it bored him. Elowen, come on, you signed those papers. You were there. I trusted you, I said quietly, and you used that trust to wipe me off the map. He shrugged. You think I wanted to do that? It was strategy, optics. You were never going to fit in long term. There it was, the truth, delivered like an invoice. No apology, no regret. Just clean up. I tried to keep my voice steady. This is your chance, Cassian. Fix it. Put my name back. Admit what you did before I take this to people who won't be as understanding. He let out a short laugh, low and smug. You wouldn't dare. That moment, that flicker of disbelief in his eyes, told me everything. He didn't think I was capable, not of retaliation, not even of resistance. You think you can go against my family? He continued. You're a ghost, Elowen. No one even remembers you were part of this company. I stood slowly, my chair scraping gently against the floor. I leaned forward just enough so he had to meet my eyes. Then I'll haunt you properly. I left without looking back. I didn't need to. He'd already told me who he was. I believed him. That night, back in my apartment, I reached out to Merritt. His reply came within minutes. We met the next morning in a small law office he claimed was off the grid. With him was Sella Grant, a corporate attorney with the kind of sharp eyes that didn't blink often. She didn't shake hands, just got right to it. You said you have proof of forgery? I nodded, pulling up the photo of the Ashford contract from Alaric's office. Sella studied it, then cross-checked it with the signature Cassian had used to transfer the holdings. Her brow furrowed. Same hand, she muttered. But that curve in the A, that's old school. Matches the founding document, not yours. We started building the case from there. A folder for each stage, draft A, signed contracts, email trails. Sella labeled everything meticulously. Evidence A through F. She made backup drives. I bought a steel lockbox. Later that evening, I sent Cassian one last message. It was short, direct. I asked you to correct the mistake. You chose not to. That was your decision. I'll make mine. He never responded. I wasn't surprised. Men like Cassian don't listen until you're holding the match. That night, I printed everything I had, labeled them neatly, and locked them away. I finally felt a step ahead. I didn't know they were already watching me. I had thought that locking up the documents would give me peace, that organizing everything into neat folders labeled evidence would create a barrier between my mind and the fear. But fear has a way of creeping around your logic, pressing into the softest parts of your brain when you least expect it. And it always knocks twice. It started with the elevator mirror. I was heading to the lobby, coffee in one hand, coat half buttoned. The kind of rushed, meaningless moment I've lived 1,000 times. But when I glanced up, I noticed it, just for a second. My reflection moved slower than I did. A delay, subtle, like a glitch in a video feed. I blinked hard, shook it off, told myself it was the lighting, maybe a trick of fatigue, but I couldn't let go of it. The elevator dinged. I stepped out and walked 2 blocks before I realized my hands were cold. Ice cold. I hadn't taken a single sip of the coffee. That night, I stayed up reviewing files again, clicking through spreadsheets, screenshots, PDFs. Most of them I knew by heart at this point, but I still had this irrational need to check them, as if the truth might change if I looked away too long. Around 1:30 a.m., my Wi-Fi dropped. Not uncommon in older buildings. I waited, reconnected, then the alert flashed across the top of my firewall app. Remote access attempt. unknown device. I froze. A pit opened in my stomach. I screenshotted the log, saved it, emailed it to Selah from my backup email, the one I'd never used with Cassian. The next morning, I met Selah at the back of a public library in Midtown. We sat in a dim cafe tucked between the stacks, surrounded by silence and the smell of dust-covered pages. She didn't greet me with small talk, just tapped the screen of her tablet. "They've pinged your IP at least 3 times," she said quietly. "And they're being careful. This isn't some hacker for hire, this is corporate surveillance." I leaned in. "How do you know it's them?" Selah looked up. Cassian's family owns 2 security contracting firms. One of them specializes in corporate compliance intelligence. That's a pretty name for psychological pressure. I stared at the chipped ceramic of my coffee mug. "So they're not threatening me, they're just watching." She nodded once. "They wait until you break yourself." I didn't want to admit how much that scared me. That afternoon, I called Tamsin, my closest friend, the one person who knew me before the Ashfords. We met at her apartment, sat cross-legged on her worn living room rug, tea in hand. "They're counting on your silence," she said, after I spilled everything. "That's what families like that do. They don't need to make a scene. They turn your own fear into a muzzle." I nodded slowly. I wanted to believe I was stronger than that. But every click, every shadow, every time I turned my head and thought I saw someone watching, it added up. I'd lived too long in a world that trained me to second-guess my instincts. The next day, I stayed home. I needed stillness. I needed to breathe without looking over my shoulder. Around 3 p.m., I heard the knock, 3 short taps, and opened the door to find a maintenance worker, someone I'd seen around but never really noticed. Older man, thick hands, eyes that didn't meet mine. He adjusted the baseboard heater, said something about pressure valves, then slipped a folded note into my recycling bin before he left. "Be careful who you talk to. Someone paid for your key logs." I stared at the words. No signature, no explanation. My apartment suddenly felt smaller. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, toothbrush in hand, but not moving. The glass vibrated softly with the passing subway below. My reflection shimmered ever so slightly, like it was breathing without me. "They can watch me," I whispered, "but they'll never see me coming." It was the first time I truly believed it. The next morning, I bought a new phone, a new laptop, an encrypted drive. Selah gave me contacts for secure messaging and data storage. I kept the old devices powered off and stored in a drawer wrapped in aluminum foil. Paranoid? Maybe. But paranoia had a point now. It wasn't delusion, it was awareness. I started building not just a legal case, but a story. I wasn't going to argue with people in suits behind closed doors anymore. That system was built for men like Cassian. Instead, I'd use what they feared most: exposure. I labeled everything. Not with letters this time, but with names. The lie. The signature. The silence. The mirror. I wrote everything down, attached screenshots, linked the dots. If I disappeared tomorrow, I wanted someone, anyone, to know how it started. That night, after hours of staring at screens, I finally turned off all the lights and sat in the dark. The mirror across the room glowed faintly. Not from a light, not from my phone. Just a soft pulse, like something alive. The faint light pulsing from the mirror didn't fade. It followed me into my dreams, into the way I breathed. For days, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had stopped belonging entirely to me. Every reflection, every window pane felt like a lens. Every shadow seemed to tilt toward my direction. Then one morning, 2 weeks after the first sign of surveillance, I woke before dawn. The city outside my window was quiet. That rare pause before the rush of New York swallowed everything. Papers were spread across my table, my laptop open, my thumb hovering above the trackpad. I'd been awake half the night, staring at the files, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock, wondering if it was time. Tamsin was sitting across from me. She'd stayed over because she didn't trust me to sleep, or maybe because she didn't trust the silence. She looked tired, but alert. "So you're really doing this?" she asked softly. "I already did," I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. It was steadier, calmer, colder. "I just haven't hit send yet." I looked down at my phone, at the draft email addressed to Auden Reyes, an investigative journalist known for exposing corporate corruption. Attached were years of contracts, bank transfers, screenshots, everything the Ashfords thought they'd erased. Tamsin exhaled. "Once this goes out, there's no coming back." "I don't want to go back," I said. Before I could change my mind, I opened the camera on my laptop. Tamsin adjusted the lighting, then nodded. "Okay, say it." I pressed record. "My name is Elowen Vale," I began. "I helped build Ashford Vale Advisors, and my name was erased. My work, my signature, my ownership, all transferred without my consent." I stopped the recording after 90 seconds. That was all it needed. No theatrics, no anger, just truth. By sunrise, the email was gone, the files, the video, everything, sent to Reyes with a single line. "You've been chasing fraud for years. Here's one that wears a suit and a family crest." By noon, my phone started vibrating. First once, then again, then constantly. I opened the news. Exclusive: Ashford family under investigation for forgery and financial misrepresentation. My name was in the subheading. My face, from that short video, appeared beside Cassian's corporate portrait. I sat down slowly. For the first time in months, I wasn't invisible. But visibility is a double-edged sword. By late afternoon, every major outlet had picked it up. Whistleblower wife exposes financial scandal. Ashford legacy in crisis. Corporate heiress turned insider. Then came the calls. From unknown numbers, blocked IDs, no caller information. I ignored all of them until the pounding came at my office door. When I opened it, Cassian was standing there. His tie was loose, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I didn't flinch. "Yes, I finally told the truth." He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You think this makes you a hero? You just destroyed everything. My company, my family." "Your lies," I interrupted. "You destroyed those yourself." He stepped closer, too close. "You always thought you were smarter than everyone, but you're predictable, Elowen, emotional, easy to spin." "Is that why you erased me?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer, just smirked, that same empty, polished smile that once fooled me into love. 2 hours later, his counterattack began. The gossip sites ran headlines of their own. "Unstable wife strikes back." "Jealous ex leaks private info." A few even published personal photos, the kind that should have stayed buried in private messages. It wasn't just humiliation, it was erasure all over again, this time through character. That night, I watched the evening news. Cassian sat on a panel, wearing that perfectly neutral face, telling the world that I'd misinterpreted business procedures, that I'd been under emotional distress. But something strange happened. People didn't believe him. The comments, the social threads, the talk shows, they started to shift. Older viewers, especially women, saw right through it. "I know that look," one woman wrote. "That's the look men wear when they're caught and still think they can talk their way out of it." The tide turned, not all at once, but enough to feel it. By the time Sella called, her tone carried a mix of relief and warning. "The SEC has requested your statement. They're moving quickly." You've started something real. I sat at my kitchen counter, the city lights flickering through the blinds. Then I guess it's too late to stop. She hesitated. Just stay alert. They'll hit back. She wasn't wrong. That night, my phone lit up again. A message from Merritt. Short, to the point. They won't go down quietly. Check your car before you drive. My breath caught. I looked toward the window at the street below. My car sat exactly where I'd left it. Quiet, still, ordinary. I locked the doors, drew the blinds, and tried to convince myself that fear didn't mean defeat. But as I turned off the lights, the night answered for me. Somewhere outside, my car alarm screamed into the darkness, shrill, insistent, and unending, like a warning I was too late to hear. The sound of the car alarm still echoed in my ears when the explosion came. A sharp crack, then a roar that swallowed the early morning air. The blast threw me backward against the lobby door. When I opened my eyes, the world was orange. The flames curled upward like a living thing, feeding on steel and gasoline. My car, or what was left of it, burned on the curb outside my apartment building. The street was empty except for the sirens already wailing in the distance. Someone must have called it in. I stood there barefoot, in a thin robe, holding my keys like they still meant something. A young officer approached once the fire was contained, his notepad trembling in his hands. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" I shook my head. My throat was dry, my voice steady only because shock hadn't worn off yet. "They meant it as a warning." He blinked. "They?" I didn't answer. There was no point explaining who they were. Not to someone who'd file a report that would never go anywhere. At the police station, I sat across from a detective who'd seen enough of the city's mess to know when to stop asking questions. He tapped the form on his desk. Professional job. Accelerant, remote trigger, clean ignition, no prints. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. "I'm sure they did," I said. He looked up, measuring me. "Anyone you want to name?" I smiled faintly. "You wouldn't believe me if I did." When I left, Sela was waiting outside, leaning against her car with her arms folded. "You should come stay somewhere else," she said. "A hotel. Just for a few nights." I wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. Later, in a small hotel room overlooking 45th Street, I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through headlines and comment threads. The explosion had already leaked online. Whistleblower's car torched amid scandal. Half the comments accused me of staging it for attention. The other half called me a liar, a bitter ex, a woman out for revenge. It's strange how quickly the noise gets inside you. Even when you know it's false, it scratches at the edges of your confidence. For a moment, I almost believed them. Then the knock came, 3 soft raps, too deliberate to be housekeeping. When I opened the door, Merritt stood there, hat pulled low, coat damp from the rain. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "I know," he replied, "but you need to hear this." He stepped inside, glancing toward the hallway before closing the door. "That explosion wasn't Cassian's doing." I froze. "What are you talking about?" "It was his father," he said quietly. "The old man's cleaning up the mess. Cassian's losing control. He's panicking. But Alaric, he's playing a longer game." I felt my stomach twist. "You're saying Alaric tried to scare me into silence." "Not tried. Succeeded. In most cases." Merritt reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small silver flash drive. "But not with you." He handed it to me. I hesitated before taking it. "What is this?" "Everything," he said. "Transfers, offshore accounts, falsified contracts, including documents Cassian signed after your separation. He forged your name again. You didn't get this from me." For a moment, the room went very still. The air felt heavy, thick with the kind of truth that changes everything. Merritt looked at me, not like an ally, not like an enemy, more like a man who finally realized which way the fire was blowing. "You wanted proof," he said. "Now you've got it. But be careful, Elowen. The Ashfords don't lose gracefully." He left without waiting for an answer. When the door closed, I sat back on the bed and stared at the skyline through the rain-streaked window. The city was waking up again, taxis flashing yellow below, distant chatter rising like static. For the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt clarity. "They wanted to burn my car," I whispered. "They forgot I was the one who built the engine." I plugged in the flash drive. The files opened one by one: spreadsheets, scanned contracts, financial transfers stretching back years. It was all there, the entire foundation of the Ashford Empire, built on deceit and stolen names. I copied everything, encrypted it, sent the files to 3 journalists I trusted, including Auden Reyes. Then I drafted one last email. Subject: live interview, 48 hours. Message: let's finish what we started. When I hit send, I didn't feel fear or relief or even anger. Just quiet conviction, the kind that doesn't need noise to feel powerful. The city outside flickered with light as the storm clouds broke. I looked down at the flash drive in my hand. Its silver surface caught the glow of the skyline, reflecting fire in miniature. Like something waiting to spread, the truth sat heavy in my chest for 2 days. I barely slept. I didn't have to rehearse. Every detail, every lie, every forged line was etched into me like scars on glass. By the time I sat in the green room of the Manhattan studio, surrounded by quiet chaos, makeup brushes, light checks, murmured countdowns, I was calm. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because I had already lost everything that fear could take. Auden Reyes entered, holding a clipboard and a half-drained coffee. He scanned my face like a surgeon preparing for a procedure. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "Once we go live, there's no undoing it." I met his eyes. "That's the point." He gave a short nod and disappeared behind the curtain. The studio lights came up slowly, soft at first, then blinding. The host's voice came through clear and practiced. "Our guest tonight is the woman behind the Ashford Exposé, Elowen Vale, former executive, former wife, current storm." I smiled slightly. They always framed women by what they were, not what they did. I adjusted the silver bracelet on my wrist, the same one I wore that night at the Ashford dinner. It caught the light now like a badge, not a chain. The first few questions were expected. Why now? Why public? I kept my voice even. "I didn't come here to relive my pain," I said. "I came here to correct the record." They asked about the finances, the stolen contracts, the missing name on company filings. I didn't rant. I laid out timelines, email chains, notarized records. For every accusation Cassian ever made behind my back, I answered with proof. Across town, in the Ashford Tower, they were watching. Cameras caught Cassian pacing behind his desk, glass in hand, sweat at his collar. His father's office door was shut. The building felt like it was holding its breath. Then came the question that mattered most, the one Auden had warned me about. Was this about revenge? I looked into the lens, not at the host, not at the millions watching, but into the core of every woman who had ever been silenced with a smile and a settlement. "I didn't fight them to win back love," I said quietly. "I fought because silence protects the wrong people." The room went still. Within minutes, that line began to trend. Tweets, headlines, reposts. Women across the country began stitching it into their own stories. Some angry, some tearful, all of them real. And then Cassian panicked. Not 20 minutes after the broadcast began, his team leaked doctored screenshots. Old messages between us, twisted to paint me as unstable, unfaithful, manipulative. But the damage only boomeranged. Auden's producers verified the file paths. All of it had been generated on Ashford Company servers, time-stamped days ago. Live on air, the host turned to Auden, eyes wide. "We've just received confirmation that the SEC has frozen Ashford Holdings, pending investigation into fraud, obstruction, and identity tampering." I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just breathed. When the cameras dimmed and the red light blinked off, Auden leaned closer. "You know this will destroy them." I slid off the mic and stood. "No," I said. "They did that themselves. I just turned on the light." Outside the studio, the city buzzed like it always had, taxis honking, neon bleeding onto pavement, strangers passing each other without meeting eyes. But to me, it sounded different, like the end of something, like the beginning of something else. That's what it felt like the first morning I woke up in the cabin. The birds outside weren't loud, just present, steady, grounding. The window was cracked just enough to let in the scent of pine and lake mist. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't need to. No alerts, no reporters, just quiet. The kind that doesn't chase you. It lets you be. For the first time, silence didn't mean absence. It meant choice. The cabin sat tucked behind a stretch of evergreens along Lake George. It had belonged to a friend of Tamsin's who said, "You need a place to disappear that doesn't feel like you're hiding." And she was right. I wasn't hiding. I was recovering. 3 months had passed since the interview. Cassian's indictment came down a week later. Securities fraud, document forgery, obstruction. The headlines stopped naming me and started naming him. The Ashford patriarch retired quietly and permanently, a scandal-shaped shadow trailing behind him like smoke. Auden's documentary aired last month. I didn't watch it. I didn't need to hear my story told back to me, framed by background music and slow camera zooms. I had lived it. That was enough. Some days, I still checked the news out of habit, not to gloat, just to understand the damage. Their empire had hollowed out quickly. Investors pulled, employees fled, and the board turned on itself like a snake eating its tail. There was no celebration, just the sound of something rotten collapsing in on itself. Then the letter arrived. I found it in the mailbox down the gravel path, tucked between a gardening catalog and a local flyer for wood chopping competitions. No return address. Just my name, written in familiar, neat handwriting. Inside was a short note from Merritt. He said he was in witness protection now, somewhere in the Midwest. "It's not glamorous," he wrote, "but it's honest." He thanked me, not with flowery words, but with simple truth. "You gave me a chance to not die a coward." He'd included something else, a photo from my wedding, the original one that had been damaged in Cassian's apartment, restored, reframed. On the back, Merritt had written one sentence: "Truth has a longer memory than power." I stared at that photo for a long time, not because I missed the life in it, but because I could finally look at it without flinching. That version of me in white wasn't naive. She was hopeful. She deserved better. And she finally got it. Later that evening, as the sun began to dip behind the hills, I walked down to the lake. The surface shimmered like glass touched by fire. I slipped the silver bracelet from my wrist, the one from the Ashford dinner, the one I wore during the interview, the one that had traveled the arc of humiliation to vindication. I held it in my palm, feeling its weight one last time. Then I opened my fingers and let it drop into the water. It didn't sink quickly. It drifted, caught in the light, then disappeared. People think healing looks like forgiveness. It doesn't. It looks like distance, the kind that lets you see everything clearly, even yourself. Tamsin visited the next weekend. She brought coffee and a box of pastries from a bakery we used to love. We sat on the porch, listening to the wind braid itself through the trees. She looked over at me and asked, "Would you ever go back to New York?" I sipped my coffee and smiled faintly. Maybe, but not as the woman they remember. The sky turned gold, then orange, then a soft bruise of purple. After she left, I pulled out a journal from the bookshelf, one I hadn't opened in years. It still had the first few pages of my wedding vows scribbled inside, half dream, half denial. I flipped past them and found a blank page near the end, and I wrote a single line. I was never their ghost, I was the spark. No one ever tells you how quiet victory sounds. There's no applause, no trumpet, just a peace that doesn't ask for attention. It just lets you breathe. And as the night settled in around the cabin, with the fire crackling low and the lake humming in the distance, I knew something simple and final. The world may forget their names, but it will remember the fire I left behind.